Was it moving out? Was it not having physical intimacy with somebody anymore? Was it feeling like my whole life was swirling into a black hole? I mean, well, yeah. But today I wanted to talk about what the worst part of a breakup was for me, because I don't know, I feel like maybe my experience was a little bit unique, but maybe some of you out there can relate to it, and if it is unique, then I want to help you because I know for me it was really hard going through this. Okay, well, unfortunately, I have to give you some backstory here in order to give you an idea of why this was hard for me. So, I've talked about my story with my last ex, like, to the death here on my channel, and I'm kind of tired of talking about it, to be honest, but I share it because I want to help people who are also going through the same kinds of things that I went through. So, here's the deal. When my ex was breaking up with me, actually, I need to go like way before that when I met my ex. When I met my ex, I had like one close friend, and I was always kind of the loner type and the type who, I don't know, like I'm comfortable being by myself. I have no issues, but just like being home all day, doing nothing. I know that would drive a lot of people crazy, but for me, like, doesn't really bother me. I do consider myself to be an extrovert, so I like being around people, but I kind of fulfill that need for myself by being on social media, like watching videos, reading about people. Like, I'm still, in my mind, interacting with people, so it's okay for me. But being like a loner, I really only had one close friend for a long time in my life, and then I had met a friend at work, and we were kind of close, but not super close, because it's like work friends, you know. And then I met my ex, and gradually, like, those two people started to fade out of my life, and I don't blame them for any of this. This was just kind of the way things went. As you probably know, sometimes when we get to meet somebody new, we want to spend all our time with them, and I don't even know that that was the reason why this happened, that they faded out of my life. It was really, if anything, it was my fault, but, you know, things happen. Sometimes people just don't remain friends, and that's okay. I was cool with that. It just was what it was. So pretty much after these two friends faded out of my life, it was just me and my ex. And my ex had a lot of friends, and over the years, I got to know them, and they kind of became my friends. At least that's how I felt. And then fast forward to the year of our breakup, we also had gone to an event where there was a ton of people, and like I really got into this event, and there was a Facebook group for it, and I was like super into meeting all the people that were there. So I like friended, like a weirdo, I friended everybody in the group, or I tried to anyway. And I felt like I gained a lot of new friends that way. And we did wind up meeting them a few other times, just casually to kind of hang out. And with these new friends, it was really nice because these were people that I finally met together with my ex. And it wasn't like people that he pre-existingly knew and came into my life. It felt like these people got to meet me as I am, not as an extension of my ex necessarily. So we had met all these people in the spring, and we hung out a little bit over the summer and into the fall a little bit, but it was in late September when my ex broke up with me, and things got really weird after that, and this is going to lead to what was really hard for me. When my ex broke up with me, I've detailed it a little bit here in other videos, but I had a hard time with it because he had tried to break up with me before, and I was like, whatever, this is just another time. Like, we just got in to see a new therapist. This does not seem like the time to be breaking up with me. Maybe he's just freaking out because he's doing therapy with somebody new and he's not used to it. I don't know. To me, it was just like, whatever, he doesn't really mean this. But then as we had a few more therapy sessions, it became really clear that this was what he really wanted to do, and it kind of made sense because he had been giving me the silent treatment a couple months before, and there were like things that happened, and it was like, okay, I guess he really does mean this. Yikes. And what happened was I had gone through a lot of stuff with my ex that I never really told anybody because I didn't really have anybody to tell. Anybody who I would have told would have also been his friend, so it wouldn't really have been appropriate. And I was trying to keep our relationship together, so I don't like to keep our problems like on blast. I don't want to like knock my ex while I'm living with him and stuff. It didn't feel right. So finally, like, he was serious about this, and I was really struggling with it because he made clear it was dead serious, and like the therapist was like, yeah, he's really serious about this. So I needed to talk to somebody, but I didn't really have that many people to talk to. So I turned to these new people in my life, and I gave them some of the details of how he had cheated on me multiple times and the behaviors that he had done. And obviously I disclosed the things that I did too. I was critical, I was demanding, but even though I was looking to them for support, it got really weird really fast, and it made me very, very uncomfortable. For one thing, like all of the friends who were his friends originally, pretty much they just like exited out of my life. They didn't talk to me, they avoided me, and I understand when people break up, you don't want to get in the middle of it, but it was pretty much cold turkey, like we're not talking anymore. And then with a lot of these new friends, some of them stuck around and were very supportive. I'm very grateful. Thank you if you're watching. Some of them kind of like questioned me and they weren't really sure about things. And then I would get advice or I would like watch what they were doing. Like it got really, really weird and uncomfortable because in my mind, I was always wondering, who can I trust? And this is especially because I was going through some stuff with mental illness at the time. So in addition to the breakup, I had that I was dealing with. And like trusting people just during a breakup, it's hard, So I kept finding myself in this weird position of wanting to reach out to people, but also not really knowing what is my ex saying about me and how is he making this breakup look, because I kind of had ideas of what he might be saying about me. And I also had ideas of lies he could have been telling because I know the way he's portrayed me in the past. And I was very concerned that a lot of people were not going to know the full truth of what happened in our relationship because they never saw the silent treatment, they never saw the cheating, they never saw a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that I saw, all the weird, awkward car rides going to and from places where there was a disconnect between the way that me and my ex presented ourselves in public and what was actually happening. Now, as I said, I was partly responsible for that because I was trying to keep our relationship intact. But now that that was kind of like out the window, I was like in panic mode because I'm thinking, oh God, no one's gonna know the truth and he's not gonna make it look like I'm the good person here. So who do I trust? Because I knew he got close to some people who I also wanted to stay close to. I had a very awkward phone call with one of them where I was trying to understand what was going on. So at this point, my ex had been like on and off coming home. And I was still trying to work things out in therapy. I made that very clear. I wanted him to not be dating other people, like while we transitioned and figured this out. And so I was wondering, like, where is he? We were getting towards winter, like snow started piling up. I had to like figure out, do I clear his spot in the snow, which I always did, but I never got answers from him when I was trying to figure this stuff out. So I finally called this mutual friend of ours who we had just met that year, and I had the awkward conversation. I didn't really want to have the awkward conversation, but I kind of like slipped in hints like maybe he's not exactly the person he's presenting himself to be to you. But they were defensive, I would say. They weren't defensive in like a nasty way or anything, but they didn't really want to get involved. They didn't want to give anything away. And after that phone call, like, it didn't really help anything. I was still kind of like, what is going on here? Who can I trust? But I really think that the hardest part of the breakup for me was not getting feedback from a lot of people. Like, a lot of people just dropped out of my life, or when I tried to contact them, they didn't want to be involved. They didn't want to have the conversation. And what that did was it pretty much left me alone. Now, like I said, there were a few people that were helping me through this, and I'm super grateful for them, because Lord knows what would have happened if I didn't have those people in my life. But I was hurting all the time, and I wanted answers. And if I didn't get answers, I wanted support. Like, I wanted my voice to be heard, especially knowing that so much had happened in our relationship that I never spoke about. And I was like, well, now that's really biting me in the ass here, because nobody knows what happened, and it looks like he's breaking up with me because I'm the problem. Like, isn't that how it works? You break up with somebody else because they're a problem. And then there was also this issue where I was having a problem with mental illness, and I was like, well, there you go. That's like the easy, obvious reason why he's breaking up with me. Just blame it on the mental illness, and poor him, he had to deal with it all these years, and I'm the bad guy. I don't think I can really express how isolated and alone I really felt during that time. You know, the winter was coming. I've had issues with this time of year, which is also coming now. where I just feel much more depressed. I feel like hopeless a lot of the time. I feel like I just don't have the energy to do things. I'm tired. So there was that. And then we had also just moved the previous year in, was it the previous? Yes, the previous year in July. So we had been there a little over a year. I'm not even sure if that's right, but I know we were there at least a year. So we had moved to this place and I was really excited to be here because it was so quiet. Aside from when like landscapers came by, it was so peaceful and quiet in there. And I've always lived somewhere noisy and, whatever, I can deal with the noise, but especially during this time of my life, I needed the peace and quiet. But when my ex wasn't around, it just left me with myself and my thoughts, and it was very clear that I was alone because of the silence in that place that we lived. And if you ever want to magnify somebody's depression when they reach out for help, don't respond or push them away or act like you don't want to get involved. And that's what was going on around me. I'm thinking about it, and there were a couple of times when certain people, I sort of lashed out at them, I guess. I guess a therapist would call it like acting out, where I was frustrated. I was really annoyed by how my ex seemed to be like skating away from all of this into his magical wonderland, and I was here dealing with the reality of what's going on and how much it sucks. And a couple of people I said some things to that were very blunt, very poignant. Some of them, the things that I said were a little crazy. And then that just made me feel more alone because I realized, I just made this even worse for myself because now it really does look like I have a mental illness. Now it really does look like I have a problem. So of course he wins. And if we just want to add another layer here to the cake, also the particular thing I was dealing with, other people didn't understand when I would explain it to them. Like just explaining it wasn't enough and they didn't get it. Sometimes I felt like they were pushing me to just move on, get over all of this, not really understanding that with this particular mental illness, you don't do that. And for maybe other people who don't have the mental illness, that's what you could do. But I was not able to do this. This was clearly something I was going to have to work on for a long time. I did wind up working on it for months. But it hurt. I was alone. And it felt like no one understood. And it felt like anything that I was trying to express wasn't getting across, wasn't being heard. To be very frank about it, when that's the kind of feedback you get from the world, and that's the kind of feedback you get from people who are somewhat close to you, it's like, well, why do I even exist? Who cares about me? Why should I even care about myself? So that was a crappy problem to have, but what did I do about that? Well, I'd never like to just leave things feeling crappy here, so what did I do? I looked up information. I figured out what was going on with me and the mental illness that I had to deal with. I did have the therapist helping to guide me through that, but I was like gasping for air, like drowning under the water, like, help me. And every time I went to go in to see the therapist, like I had 20 more questions. Probably I actually wrote lists of questions. Maybe one day I'll go through some of that. But I had like giant lists of questions, and like it was like that whole hour or whatever, 45 minutes or whatever it was that I was with her, like it was like running down the questions, and then I still had questions, and I would email her and she would try to be like, I can't take all of these emails between session, I'm sorry. But so I was very grateful for the therapist. The therapist helped me a lot, but it was like also I needed more than that. And so I got books. I looked up books about what I needed help with. I went on YouTube and I watched lectures and I read research papers, and like I did everything that I possibly could to work on the mental illness first, because I recognized like that was a huge obstacle here. Like I couldn't survive a day. It was hard. I would spend the entire day, probably the day before also, just planning to be able to have the energy and the strength to go to the grocery store and buy food. So obviously that was something that needed to be fixed, because otherwise I was physically not gonna make it through any of this. Obviously I did. But going online and finding people helped a lot. You know, I got into some support groups. I talked with different people. I asked my questions there. Those people understood me a little bit better than the people who I thought were close to me. Actually, strangers seemed to understand me better. So I went to the strangers and I talked to them, and I watched more YouTube videos to try to get a better understanding of what was going on, because I've used YouTube videos in the past when I had mental health issues. That was very helpful. And honestly, it took me a very long time, like months, maybe over a year, because to like really find people that I could feel supported by, that understand the things that I go through and who don't judge me for going through them. Because it took me a year before I finally started really, really talking about stuff in an open way. And I had started this channel here, and that helped connect me to a lot of people. Even if it wasn't the people watching the videos, I don't know, it just opened the way that I talk to people on social media. So before, on social media, I was always in like my little bubble of people that I knew, and I wasn't really open to meeting new people so much, or maybe I was, but I was kind of like waiting for them to come to me or something. But after all of this, it really helped me to realize that there's a huge world out there, especially with mental health. If you have not explored, you have no idea how many people are on the internet talking about mental health issues. So I started like proactively going out and searching. You know, I was primarily a Facebook user. I started using YouTube. I started checking out Twitter and Instagram. I started going on Reddit. I started finding all the different websites that have mental health issue and checking those out. I started reading blogs. Like, I just totally expanded the possibilities in my life. And this is something I try to recommend to anybody who's going through a breakup, is remember, everything feels very crunched down and small, and like you're never going to get through this, but maybe it's just a small narrowing for now, and you're going to come out and it's going to expand again. So always keep that in mind, that the future will get bigger and brighter and better. I had to, because if I didn't, I would have been stuck here, and there was no escaping here without a vision of here. Being isolated was the worst part of my breakup. What has been the worst part for you? If you feel like sharing, leave that down below. Maybe you'll find somebody to connect to here.